everybody, and welcome to the fourth episode of Talking Business, a series of conversations with small business owners in the North Metro Denver area. My name is Angela Atkinson, and I'm director of the North Metro Small Business Development Center. And we started this series of conversations about 4 weeks ago. We had the idea sort of in the midst of the crush of demand for EIDL and PPP loans, and a lot of calls from small business owners who were just really struggling with trying to understand what resources that were available to them, but also really noticing that with the quarantine and the isolation, that there wasn't really an opportunity to create a forum for small business owners to learn from each other. And so we started this series as an experiment to interview small business owners who are in the trenches, who've been working with SBDCs, and just hear their story as education, as inspiration, just as a way of being able to share experiences, which is a form of education. So very briefly, the SBDCs, if you aren't familiar with our services, we're a national nonprofit. We have centers in every state. There are 15 in Colorado. The North Metro SBDC serves Adams County and Broomfield County and North Jeffco. And our services are really amazing. We offer free one-on-one consulting with experienced consultants like Jon Jaggers, who's going to be facilitating the meeting today. We also offer workshops and webinars like the one today. So our goal is to help small business owners start, thrive, scale, and in these times, survive. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jon. You will see on the right-hand side of your screen the opportunity to ask questions throughout the session. So go ahead and type any questions in that tab. And at the end, we'll pose those to Jon and Paul. And I'll let Jon Jaggers introduce our guest, Paul Beier of Dale's Meats. And with that, I'll hand it over to you, Jon.
All right, thank you so much, Angela. As Angela said, my name is Jon Jaggers. I am a manufacturing and lead consultant for SBDC. My background is 25 plus years, and I won't say how much more than that, but 25 plus years of manufacturing management with some very large Fortune 500 companies. So I got a really tremendous experience in working with those companies. And back in 2014, based on my wife's advice, I went into semi-retirement, but I'm the kind of person that has to stay busy. And I wanted to share my 25 years of management experience with others. And so I was given the opportunity to work for SBDC back in 2014, and I've been working with them pretty actively for the last 6 years. And the way that I have applied my skills is that working with smaller companies is a little different than working with large companies because you don't have all the resources. So you have to take advantage of really the resources that you have. But I try to provide some processes that will help business owners optimize their processes. So I'm involved in strategic planning, lean manufacturing, a lot of training, even delve into marketing because I've learned a lot about marketing over the last 6 years. And I've really had the privilege of working with many different clients, mostly manufacturing, but not necessarily always manufacturing. Business systems seem to work on almost any application. So today we're gonna talk to Paul. Paul and I have had a relationship since January, so we've seen good times and bad times. But the reason that when Angela and I first talked about this is that I picked Paul is because I feel like that Paul and his team have the resilience to overcome a really terrible pandemic situation. And the other thing that I really like about Paul is from a standpoint of working with the client. He and I brainstorm a lot. He listens to my experience and he applies it. And I think that's fantastic. So it's enough about me for sure. I'm going to turn it over to Paul. Paul, if you can just cover both your background and the history of Dale's Meats, that'd be great.
Thanks, John. Good morning. My name is Paul Beier. I'm the owner of Dale's Meats in Brighton. My company was founded in 1968 by my father and grandfather. We started as custom processors, retail, and moved into food service and the wholesale meat industry. I grew up learning from my dad and my grandfather. In mid 90s, I needed a change. Went to work for Costco. Spent about 20 years there. Ended up as an assistant general manager, and my dad was looking to retire, and the timing was right for me to leave the corporate world and go back into the family business. Our primary focus right now is on jerky. About 85% of our sales are in jerky, and the other 15% is in sausage. And we primarily do wild game. Raised buffalo, venison, elk are probably our three biggest sellers.
Okay. If we could have the PowerPoint, I want to do a little introduction here on our, there we go. Okay, so I think that Paul and his team, Dale's Meats, is a perfect example of resilience. And really this is what the series is about, is resilience. So if you can go on to the next slide. And there you go. So the history, very short history actually, in January 2020, Paul did an inquiry with SBDC, and he wanted a consultant to work with him from a standpoint of how can we incorporate packaging into the beef jerky process. A lot of today is done manually, and Paul understands the advantage of automation and packaging equipment. He'd already done considerable research on the equipment in order to have a discussion. So next slide, next cell. So we met several different times. My suggestion to Paul is that we formulate a return on investment based on the cost and then the payback that you would get with that. Paul does a really tremendous job of tracking his financials, his cash flow. He constantly knows, where he's at from a standpoint of his financials, which made it very easy for me to do an ROI. So next cell, or next one. So with the ROI, we took into consideration the added capacity, which is a plus from automation, labor cost reduction, and overtime reduction. One more. So based on that analysis, we came to the decision that Paul would purchase and finance this equipment. Now it's kind of came to a halt because of COVID, but we're going to, a little later on in the discussion, we'll talk about where we're at today on that. So next slide, please. Okay, so I'm not sure you can see all this, and some of this is made up for purposes of this webinar, but the packaging equipment investment was 165,000. We felt like with that added capacity would increase Paul's sales by 440,000, and then a basic, very simple net income adds 35,000 to the bottom line. And then the labor reduction, one full-time employee and benefits reduction. There was considerable $10,000 worth of overtime that Paul spent last year in the packaging area. And then I threw in some additional efficiency from a standpoint of what the packaging equipment would do. It's automating several steps along the way. So total savings 100,000, and you can see your return on investment is 1.65 years, which is extremely good. So with that, we came to the decision that Paul needed to purchase it. So next slide, please. So in addition to ROI, some of the things that I suggested to Paul after several different meetings was we need to look at the potential for marketing to expand his sales. He's already on a growth path, which he's going to talk about here in a second. But based on my 6 years of experience and really having some great advice from other marketing consultants, I felt like there's a couple things that would help Paul. So next one. And one, yeah, okay, there you go. So I looked at his website, and actually his primary website for e-commerce is a Mountain American Jerky. And so it's a good site, but I felt like that some content marketing was appropriate, mostly from a standpoint that helps his SEO placement, continually updating information. And we'll talk about that a little bit more here in a minute. So the other, go on. So the other piece was customer testimonials, which in today's world of marketing, everybody goes and looks for referrals as to what previous customers thought, and so we felt like that was a good add-on also. So next one. And then Paul had already been in the process of promotional blasts with email, and so but we wanted to continue that because it's pretty effective. And the next one. And then social networking, again, from a standpoint of getting the word out in today's marketplace, that communication about excellent quality and customer service. The one great thing about Dale's Meats is they're a small company, and they're very responsive to their customers. Okay. So, you know, the whole point of this discussion is talking about resilience and talking about Paul and his ability. He's got a long-term company, his ability to work around and get around disruptions. And disruptions couldn't be any more than what's happened with the pandemic. So that's kind of the theme of what we're going to talk about. Okay, thanks. So with that, Paul, let's go back to January, February, and if you could just talk about where you were at that point from a growth standpoint and from what was going on.
Well, after coming out of the holiday season, which was very productive for us for the online sales, January, February, we were trending about 40% up over prior year between our wholesale business and the online business. So things were going in the right direction. I was looking at hiring more employees, or the option of a piece of equipment to not only speed up the process but avoid having to hire additional employees and just maintain the staff that I had at that point in time.
You know, the other thing that I would ask you about, Paul, is that I guess it was in 2019 you went out and purchased the rights and really everything involved in Mountain American Jerky, which is really your e-commerce driver. Can you talk about that for a second?
Yeah, the owner of the website had a wholesale list of people that he was selling to. He was looking to retire, either A, sell the business, or B, just in a couple of years close it up. And I felt it was a good opportunity for me to A, maintain the business that we were doing with Mountain American Jerky and bring it in-house for the additional margin that was available on the e-com site versus just straight wholesale business. So I worked with him over a couple of months, and we made a deal on the website and his wholesale list, and I'm glad I did, because it helped us through this, helped us through the last couple of months, and it'll be beneficial over the next few months.
Okay, terrific. So when COVID-19, the pandemic hit, can you just describe in a couple words what the impact was?
Devastating.
That's one good word.
We Monday, March 16th, I was looking at our sales. I was looking at the orders that have been coming in, and I felt confident that it wasn't going to have an impact on our business. And by the end of that week, our wholesale business had gone from 100 to 10. It had virtually stopped. And up until about 2 weeks ago, there really hasn't been, our only source of income has been from online business and some small wholesale orders.
Right. So again, demonstrating your resilience, you and I talked a couple of times, and so just describe to the group some of the things that you had to do from a standpoint of making that pivot. It's a favorite word everybody uses right now. So you pivoted, like basketball, but you went from the wholesale into very strong e-commerce. So talk about that for a second.
We, after talking with Jon, we had shown some success with email blasts in the past. I was trying not to do them too often. I know when my inbox gets inundated with mail, I start to ignore them. So prior to mid-March, we were sending one, sometimes two if there was a holiday involved. And starting about the 1st of April, we were running 3 to 4 a month with good success, running promotions, with percentages off, focusing on healthcare workers, trying to tie some good content into the emails, preparing, what to do to prepare for the pandemic at home, at work, just not only sending the email blasts out, but trying to put some good content in with them that people could find useful. Well,
I think looking at your website over the last month or so, it's changed from a standpoint of your content marketing is current, it's relevant. You talk about different aspects, not just in selling product, but different aspects of how we deal with this pandemic, which I think is tremendous. You got a lot of positive points in there in the website and on your emails that it demonstrates a really good positive attitude, which I think is very, very important very important, and from a standpoint of staying resilient, as we all try to do. The other thing that I want to talk about just for a second is our involvement and your involvement in obtaining both the Paycheck Protection Plan loan and the idle loan. Can you talk about that process for a little bit?
Yeah, I applied for the PPP when it first went live, through the tedious application process of, waiting for downloads and do it in the middle of the night when everybody wasn't on it. And it took me a couple days to get all the documentation downloaded and into the system. I did receive confirmation that they had it, but then, I don't know, 2 weeks into it, they said they were out of funds. Fortunately, mine had been secured prior to that, after going through several different banks that had said that, yeah, we'll take care of it, and then it was their customers only. So it was, I jumped through a lot of hoops for a couple of weeks to get it done and in place. Idle went a little smoother. I think the application process had changed a little bit. Again, it was a waiting game. Once the application was in, it just said processing, and SBA was, the phone lines were busy, and they had the same information that I had on my end, that it's been accepted and it's processing. But fortunately, they both did go through for me.
Yeah, I think a really key point here is the fact that I mentioned earlier that you take a lot of time to make sure your financials are in order, and all the multiple questions that were on both applications you were able to answer because you had that information at your fingertips. And that's a really key point from a small business standpoint. You need to know really where your financials stand, where your cash flow sits. It's not like it's all that difficult. It's time consuming, but it's extremely important. And in this case, it really paid off for sure. So the other thing, Paul, from the PPP and hiring employees back, talk about that just for 1 second.
I did have some employees that were hesitant to come back. The unemployment's taking care of people very well right now, so it was a little bit of a challenge, but I've got good employees. I think I hired 8 out of the 10 came back, and I've rehired. I do have 1 new hire on hand, but it's helping now. Things are starting to pick up. The last couple of weeks, we've been able to build our inventory a little bit, to try to get ahead of the curve so that hopefully the floodgates don't open, but hopefully the business trickles back in. We can keep up as it starts.
So you and I have talked about this. What steps are you in the process of taking? Have you taken that really have to do with, unfortunately, the potential of a second wave? And we've all learned a lot of different things from the first go round. So just talk a second about some of the things that you're doing that are going to expand your opportunities.
Well, the one thing I learned a few weeks ago is that we need to diversify, I think, not only our product line, but our customer base. So we're in the process of formulating some new products to try to hit another, a different market than what we're in right now. And then I'm also pursuing different avenues. Smaller chains. I don't think we could take on a big chain right now at this point in time, but smaller retail chains that have stayed open through this process. There's some co-ops out there that sell to different avenues, whether it be sporting goods or hardware stores. There's purchasing co-ops that we're approaching, and the military PX. I think there's another name for it now, but we're pursuing sales into the retail outlets on military bases.
Okay. Yeah, that's tremendous. And again, I want to emphasize from an e-commerce standpoint, your website is from a content marketing standpoint and from a referral standpoint it is just fabulous. If I was out there looking around, I know that helps your SEO because I looked at it this morning. That helps your placement, so it puts you in an advantage. So, kind of wrapping up, Paul, what advice would you give to other similar small business owners from a standpoint of where we're at and what to look forward to?
I think the one thing that's helped me the most and my family through this thing's been a good support group. My father's still involved in the business to a certain point. I think consultants are huge. John's been very beneficial through this. I've got a very good working relationship with my bank, which has been huge. Vendor relations. I don't know the way the cash flow stopped without having the support of my vendors continuing to be willing to sell me product as I was unable to pay the bills that I'd had pre-COVID. Them working with me was huge. The different industry associations, for me, the American Association of Meat Processors been a good source of information and help. Colorado Department of Agriculture has been beneficial also. So I think having available resources in a good support group is huge.
Okay, very good. Well, Paul, thank you so much. And I just want to say that you and I are going to continue our consulting relationship. I look forward to some great times where we're going to put the growth in place and put the packaging equipment in place, and you're going to be. I know from a standpoint of just the way what your makeup is, you're going to be a total success. So. Angela, we'll turn it over to you for questions.
Yeah, hi, John. Hi, Paul. This is your technical assistant, John Hovey, in the background. We do have a few questions from the audience, and let's see what we have. So our first question comes from...
I think we lost John.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. This question comes from Larry. Are your email blasts to existing clients, or do you purchase lists?
We're just to existing clients. Past clients, just the email list that we've had. We didn't go out and purchase a new list.
I see. John, any thoughts about purchasing lists of clients, or is that something that you generally recommend?
I don't know. I guess it depends on what your situation is. Generally not, I would say, would be my answer. I think too many scams happen out there, and one thing to Paul's advantage, he's got a tremendous network of clients at this point, and I'd almost recommend social networking and the website more so than I would that type of purchase.
Great. All right, our next question comes from Pamela. She says, I have a small business that is growing fast enough that I'm having a hard time keeping up. but not big enough to bring on people. I think she means employees. I have a lot to learn, but I know I have a good product. And she wants to know where do I go to get help?
That's an easy one to answer. Go to SBDC, North Metro Denver, SBDC.com, sign up, and I'm sure Angela will put you with one of the best consultants possible. So that'd be my recommendation.
That sounds great. All right, and our last question. Oh no, we got a couple more coming in. This is great. This one comes from Nikki. Nikki says, could Jon say again what puts Paul at an advantage regarding SEO?
I think, okay, so it's all driven by his website. Some of the things he didn't have that he does today is content marketing. So on a regular basis, Paul will post, you can call it a blog, you can call it information, whatever you want to call it, but he puts content on there that is totally applicable to both his business and to the time. So it's current, and he's trying to sell product, but at the same time, he's also providing information that not only informs the customer, but what it does, Google will take a look at your website almost every day, and if you have content marketing put on the website on a regular basis, that moves your placement on Google. I'm gonna Google beef jerky, and what's gonna come up is gonna be Mountain American jerky, because that's what Paul has done. The other part is referrals. Paul has a lot of current referrals on there from a standpoint of recommending the product, very short blurbs, and you know, not anything complex, but 5 stars all the way, and that also impacts your SEO placement. Okay.
That's fantastic. Lisa asks, what social networking channels do you use? And then maybe we could broaden that. Are there any, Paul, that you're looking at, you know, to branch into as well?
Currently, it's just Facebook. We haven't been real aggressive with it yet. We've been spending the time on the website more so than the social side. And currently, I'm not considering any other outlets at this point in time.
Great. Jon, are there any social media or social networking channels that you would recommend beyond Facebook?
You know, it really depends on what your product and service is. You know, LinkedIn is very positive from a standpoint of business services. I don't know, Instagram is supposedly very good from a marketing standpoint. I think Facebook is good. If you're a local and you've got neighborhood services, nextdoor.com is excellent from a standpoint. Your particular neighbors will be talking and recommending different products and services. So that's pretty much it.
Great, great. So this next question comes from Lauren, and Lauren asks, what challenges do you anticipate regarding the forgiveness of the PPP loan?
That's a tough one. I'm documenting everything in hopes that it flows through like it's supposed to. I'm making sure I spend that 75% on payroll to try to get that other 25% forgiven. My personal opinion is if you spend 75% or more, I think there's a pretty good shot they're going to take care of it. And I think the lenders, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jon, but I think the lenders are doing most of the approval on the forgiveness side of it. So I think having that good relationship with the banker and making sure everything's documented. I opened up a separate account just for the PPP, and I'm running everything through there. I switched my payroll over to it. I'm running the utilities and the rent through that one account so that I don't have to produce additional documents for the bank or for SBA when the time comes. Everything's documented in one account. I've just got to have backup documentation for it.
No, you are right on the money, Paul, as usual. From a standpoint, really, you're looking at a couple of different things. You're doing excellent tracking. A separate account is recommended. From a standpoint of forgiveness, 75% or more on payroll is a must, and a good constant relationship with your bank is very, very important.
That's fantastic. And for the webinar participants, I just put a link in the chat as well. We did a presentation last week about the PPP forgiveness as well, and we have the video available for people to get a little bit more information from that as well. All right, our next question for you gentlemen comes from Lisa again. Lisa says, also, do you write your own content for your website? And I think that's a good question. Is it worth hiring a writer, hiring a website content developer, or are you creating your own content?
I do hire somebody for copy. We come up with ideas collectively, and then I do have someone writing for us, yes.
Great. And our last question comes from Nikki, and Nikki asks, how about forgiveness for idle? She says, I see it's closed unless you're an agriculture business. Will it be available again? As a small business with no employees, can I apply even though I filed for unemployment?
I don't know the answer to that one.
Yeah, and I don't think the idle is forgivable. I think it was set up as a straight low interest 30-year loan is my understanding of idle. And I don't know if they're going to reopen with for more applications or not.
Well, there's other stimulus packages that they're attempting to pass right now, but whether it's going to be similar to idle or PPP, I really don't know.
Great. And it seems like a good idea would be to once again visit the northmetrosbdc.com and make an appointment with a consultant to work through questions like that.
That's right.
All right. Well, gentlemen, we're out of questions, and we're.
I have one other thing that I always want to end a good webinar with a little humor. Okay, so we've all been through some trying times. I want to kind of go through the history of what we experienced with some props. So number one, the first thing that none of us could get in the beginning was eggs. Okay. The second thing, even though we tried to get it from Costco, was the most important piece right here, as you can see. And then here lately, it's impossible to get your N95 mask. However, that's all been taken care of. Either you made your own mask, or as my lovely wife puts together. However, with all that behind us, a little marketing, Paul, I recommend that you go to mountainamericanjerky.com and order up.
Thanks, Sean.
That's all.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you both so much for this presentation, and thanks to our audience for tuning in and for those great questions. Paul will post a link to your website in the follow-up email so that people can put those orders in for your product. And yep, John, people will be able to make appointments at northmetrosbdc.com as well for business consultation. And I'd also like to take just a moment to plug next week's show and put up our video here one more time. Great. Next week, we'll be talking business episode 5, and our consultant, Jesse Esparza, is going to be interviewing Huma Ubadi, who runs Muslim Youth for Positive Impact. And the theme of the show is going to be using your business to further a good cause. So the registration link is in your chat window for all the participants, and we hope to see you at our webinar next week. Final thoughts, John and Paul, before we sign off?
I guess my final thought would be, I just think that Paul is a great demonstration of resilience. We're all going to get through this. And some of the things that he has said certainly are the keys to getting through it. So, Paul?
I just want to thank SBDC for allowing me to speak with you guys today, and John for his help over the past few months. And if anybody has any questions, there is a email link on my site. Feel free to email me if you have any questions. I'd be more than happy to help if I can.
Great.
Gentlemen, well, thank you so much. And thanks again to our audience, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Thanks.